That in order to get alt season, which is what people want,
Mhm.
ETH Bitcoin has to bottom, right? It has to convincingly bottom. If Bitcoin goes up, it'll lift the asset class with it, right? I mean, if Bitcoin goes up, it'll take Ethereum with it. It's just that until there's a change in policy, it doesn't mean that ETH Bitcoin can't go lower. To get what everyone wants, which is alt season, you have to have ETH Bitcoin bottom. But in order for ETH Bitcoin to bottom, you have to have a reason for the Fed to pivot. And we just haven't had that reason yet. So
Are we on the verge of a major altcoin breakout, or is the market still waiting for a critical shift in monetary policy? In this video, Benjamin Cowen dives deep into the connection between Ethereum's performance against Bitcoin, market liquidity, and the ongoing struggle for altcoins to gain momentum. He breaks down why the ETH-BTC ratio matters, how past cycles can help predict the future, and what needs to happen before alt season returns. Cowen also discusses the impact of quantitative tightening, the broader macroeconomic landscape, and whether meme coin mania has derailed smarter capital allocation in the crypto space. If you are holding Ethereum or any altcoins, this is an essential update that could shape your strategy moving forward. Stay ahead of the market by subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you don't miss out on expert insights. Let's get started.
I want to connect the decline of the top 100 cryptocurrencies to the ETH dollar and ETH BTC ratios. What would you say about the connection between these two concepts, like the relationship between ETH BTC and the valuation of the middle of the market coins?
I think that in order to get alt season, which is what people want,
Hmm.
ETH Bitcoin has to bottom, right? It has to convincingly bottom. And in 2022, I said it could go as low as 0.03, and here we are at 0.027. And I don't
We
know,
touched lower too.
right? We went to 0.023, and I don't know exactly where the bottom is on it. I do know that last cycle it bottomed when QT ended. Right. When
Mm.
quantitative tightening ended, that's when ETH Bitcoin bottomed. I had speculated previously that we might get some type of capitulation event around the time that the supply of ETH reaches the pre-merge supply. To me, what it sort of symbolizes to me is that, some of that liquidity that we had for the last couple of years is starting to dry up some. The demand's just not there like it was. We saw what ETH was doing when the demand was really high around the merge. It was absolutely deflationary, and you can see just how deflationary it was back then. But the demand has been drying up. I think people are getting exhausted from, I think people are tired, and they want to see other things do well. And obviously the Bitcoin heavyweight is good, but when does it change? And so I think that, it's all tied together, right? The ADI doesn't really start going up until quantitative tightening ends, more than likely. And quantitative tightening doesn't end until there's a good reason to end
Hmm.
quantitative tightening. And so it's just been like a brutal market, right? Where, like, if Bitcoin goes up, it'll lift the asset class with it, right? I mean, if Bitcoin goes up, it'll take Ethereum with it. It's just that until there's a change in policy, it doesn't mean that ETH Bitcoin can't go lower. Now, again, you know me. I mean, I was very bearish on ETH Bitcoin in 2022, 2023, and
Hmm.
2024, but it's like my mind tells me, like, I know, it's like I can comprehend that it could go lower because quantitative tightening hasn't ended, but it also feels like 0.023 is just extremely low, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's kind of similar to 2019 when ETH Bitcoin went to 0.017, right? It went to 0.017 back in 2019, and that was when I made my first video on my channel. I was like, guys, this is insanely low, and just like the market can be irrational at extremes to the upside, it can also be irrational to extremes to the downside. And I think we've entered into that phase. Again, I don't know exactly how much lower it's going to go, but I actually, one chart, if you could bring it up, since you have that chart right there, could you actually type in ETH divided by BTC? So we're looking at the market cap of ETH divided by the market cap of Bitcoin. Um, and then just hit enter. Just hit enter. And if you
Okay.
look at this, you can see that it's getting pretty close to where it was, back
Yeah.
in 2019. So to me, it makes sense to think it's probably going to turn around sometime.
Yeah.
Um,
There's only
Soon,
been 1 year of total time in which
right,
the ratio of market caps has been lower than it is today.
right.
Usually, this is an anomaly. It's like something like 5 or 6 years of Ethereum's time. The market cap of Ethereum, the ratio of a market cap to Ethereum to Bitcoin has been higher than it is today, and only maybe 1.5 years has it been lower.
Right. If you ignore that one big candle in like early 2018, basically the market cap ratio tops out at around 50%, right?
Hmm.
Anytime the market cap of ETH is around 50% of that of Bitcoin, that's where it tops on its Bitcoin
Right.
pair. And then it looks like it might bottom around like 10% to 15% or so. Um, and maybe 11%. I don't know. It was like, I think from what I remember, it was like 10 to 15%. And it's already gone to 14%.
Hmm.
So, look, I don't know. I don't know how much lower it's going to go. I know that, until quantitative tightening ends, it could always theoretically go lower, but, you know, I, I can't with a clear conscience like call for lower, even though like my mind tells me like it could. Um, I just think it makes sense mentally to start thinking about it, finding support at some point, and then starting to go back up. And I would look towards quantitative tightening, the end of that. Whenever that ends, I would be much more confident in saying the low is in.
Hmm. There's been this ancient Ben Cowen meme of ETH going home, which is what you've been
Right.
talking about. Maybe if you were to zoom back out to the early days of the genesis of the ETH go home meme, at this current price, would you say that ETH has gone home?
It's only wicked into the regression band. I think the issue for me is that it's one of those things where like it's absolutely a meme because like I wish it would have happened in 2022. I wish it would have because I feel like if it had, maybe ETH Bitcoin could have just bottomed back then. Like if,
Mm,
if there had been like a reason for changes in monetary policy to occur. So it's kind of like we're stuck in this like place where like if it doesn't go lower into the regression band, then is there really a reason for the Fed to end quantitative tightening, right? You would think there has to be a scare in the market to end quantitative tightening. Um, and that hasn't, it sort of happened. I mean, look, technically speaking, and I always say being technically correct is the best way to be correct. Technically, it did go into the regression band, right? It
mm,
did wick into it just a few weeks ago after the Bank of Japan raised rates. That was the last several times. That was when ETH went into the regression band. So technically it has, right? Technically it has. It could go lower into the regression band. I think if it did, it would definitely signal the end of quantitative tightening. So
mhm.
the way I think about the market right now is this. I think that if Bitcoin goes up from here, then ETH probably won't go any lower in the short term, right? It'll probably just bounce again off of another higher low. It could go up again, maybe even go to all-time highs. But if there's no change in monetary policy, uh, while ETH Bitcoin could bounce, it could still just be a lower high. If ETH struggles for a few months on its USD pair, um, I mean, it could even just go sideways and the regression band would catch up to it, right? If ETH could struggle for a little bit longer and causing the Fed the Fed doesn't care about ETH, but I do think ETH gives us insight into conditions in the
Right,
market, right?
right.
Um, I think that it would cause that pivot and then ETH Bitcoin would really start to go up. So it's really been this hard thing because like, I keep saying, well, ETH is going to go home and then it doesn't go home. And then ETH Bitcoin keeps going lower. So it's like, in order to get what everyone wants, which is alt season, you have to have ETH Bitcoin bottom. But in order for ETH Bitcoin to bottom, you have to have a reason for the Fed to pivot. And we just haven't had that reason yet. So it's almost like to get what we want, we have to go where we don't want to go, you know?
Right.
And
You
as
have to
long as we
force
don't
it.
go, right. And as long
If
as we
you're
don't
going
go
through hell, you gotta keep going.
Right, and as long as we don't go there, then, it is fine, right? As long as we don't go there, the market's okay, but it just means that Bitcoin dominance is likely gonna go higher. So I think
Mhm.
you have to have an event to cause Bitcoin dominance to really macro top out.
And maybe you don't really have any crystal ball about the nature of said event, but I think what you're saying is like we are approaching a period of time in which the likelihood of a possible event that would create the end of QT is getting higher as we go forward.
Right, but the crazy thing is that we're in February of 2025 at this point,
Uh-huh.
I'm like, how long is the Bitcoin dominance rally gonna go on? I mean, it's exceeded my expectations,
Right.
I mean, I did think it would go until QT ended, but I didn't think QT was gonna last this long either. Um, so that and you know what I think is more difficult for the markets right now is not the ETH Bitcoin pair. I mean, the ETH Bitcoin pair, as far as I'm concerned, is already extremely low.
Hmm.
I think what still needs to make that same move is the rest of the altcoin market on their Bitcoin pairs. So like if you look at a chart, I don't know if you can pull it up, but if you just look at total 3, so in parentheses, total 3 minus USDT, or sorry, just not, don't
the
spell
number
out
3.
3, just the number 3, yeah, minus USDT, and then close parentheses, and then divided by Bitcoin, and then enter. Yeah, so like in this case, you see they are still off of their lows, and um, and I wonder if ETH Bitcoin continuing to struggle is sort of signaling that the altcoin market will eventually follow suit. Because if you think about like ETH Bitcoin market cap ratio is pretty close to where it bottoms, right? It's not like it's that far off. It last cycle it bottomed at like 10 to 15%. It already went to 14. But alt Bitcoin pairs last cycle bottomed at around 25%, 0.25 of Bitcoin's market cap. And they're still at like, a lot higher than that. Now, I think they did wick down to 33%. But I just wonder if that's sort of the final, the missing piece of the puzzle is the devaluation of alt Bitcoin pairs. And I think, look, I think that one of the reasons why ETH has struggled so much is because there's been a lot of malinvestment this cycle, right? People keep throwing their money into a lot of useless meme coins that keep just asymptotically going to zero to Bitcoin. And so it's basically like people are either buying Bitcoin or they're buying meme coins. And there's not a lot of investment going into things in between. So I think the industry needs to mature. It needs to grow up. It needs to figure out where the value truly is. And then once that happens, then I think, things like the ETH Bitcoin pair will start doing better. But how long, I don't know exactly when it's going to be.
I think on the crypto Twitter timeline that I'm reading, the people are growing more and more resentful of the current meme coin mania. And people have always been resentful towards meme coins, but that's been buffered by a very willing and interested market cohort of participants that are very into meme coins. But I'm seeing meme coins really grow out of fashion these days, especially with this Dave Portnoy meta, where people are making comments about how like meme coin charts can't sustain a pump more than 8 hours, which like just indicates the fact that like even the people who are left to gamble are just really doing it for the most short-term like time preferences. Right. So maybe it's too early to call like a closing of the meme coin casino. But I do notice just like negative sentiment towards the concept and industry of meme coins. And this also goes along with the idea like pump.fun is draining the hot ball of money from crypto Twitter. From crypto in general. You tweeted this out. The market sucks because grifters keep shilling meme coins, which leads to malinvestment and the misallocation of capital. The Fed can't pivot away from quantitative tightening until investors learn to stop pouring money into useless shitcoins. The beating will continue until morale improves. I really love these very loose, distant connections between Federal Reserve monetary policy and the actions of the meme coin casino. Like you're not actually the Federal Reserve. You don't think the actual Federal Reserve is looking at the meme coin, but maybe it's indicative of like the market generally, both inside of crypto and outside of crypto, of this like smart capital allocation. And maybe in some like distant way, the Federal Reserve is making monetary policy based off of that vibe. Is that kind of what you're doing?
Yeah. Like I'll try to joke sometimes like at the, the FOMC briefings and be like Powell quotes, and I'll put in a quote right there and I'll be like, Powell will say that ETH Bitcoin can bottom when people stop buying, all these meme coins and stuff. I think the idea is this, like, if there's so many people that have all this extra money to throw them into all these like newly launched meme coins to sustain pumps for weeks and weeks and weeks or months and months and months, then it just means there's a lot of liquidity and they don't really have a reason to end quantitative tightening. But as you noted, the meme coin pumps are actually getting smaller and smaller. And they're not lasting nearly as long as what we saw back in like 2023 and even 2024. It seems like they're kind of dying over a weekend now, where it kind of goes up for a day or two and then it just goes right back down. I mean, even the president of the United States launched a meme coin and it didn't really last that long before it just kind of went back down. So I think that you're right. Like Powell doesn't care about, the crypto markets. It's certainly not as far to determine monetary policy about it. I just think that the crypto markets, one of the interesting cases for it is I think that it allows us to give some insight, or we can get some insight into liquidity conditions and what the Federal Reserve might do just based on what the valuation of high risk assets in the cryptoverse are doing against lower risk assets in the cryptoverse, right? So like meme coins against Bitcoin. Same idea, right? If you look at the Russell against the NASDAQ, you can see the same things. Even like silver against gold, right? In every asset class, you have sort of the blue chips outperforming the micro caps. And that doesn't change until monetary policy changes.